When does a prospect buy a car? When he signs a contract? When he pays you for it? When he takes delivery? When the check clears? When does he actually buy that car? On the lot? When he walks in the door? When he gives you approval? Who said in his mind? Okay. A prospect actually buys your car when he takes mental ownership. When he takes mental ownership. Now let me give you some examples. How can we get that prospect to take mental ownership? Some of this will have application. I'm fixing to touch on one that I'll assure you if you'll try it this afternoon. Now remember, we can only use what we practice. We can't use what we know. Try it this afternoon. Make yourself a note. I'm going to try it somewhere during my sales presentation if you need it. If you don't need it, don't use any of this. If something works, don't fix it. I see a lot of salesmen being run out of the business for one reason. All these new systems they've come down the pike with. Some of these people that's writing these systems, they're selling these dealers, never sold a car in their life, the people that wrote the system. Theoretically perfect. Technically, it won't work. If something works, don't fix it. If you've got a good salesman in the store, how many of you have seen a good salesman leave because they brought in some kind of new system? Have you seen it happen? Some of these systems are running the best automobile people in the business out of the business. If something works, leave it alone. Don't fix it. Man selling cars, leave him alone. I think selling is very personal. You've got to do it your way. You can't be me. I can't be you. We can share ideas. You choose what fits with you. I'll choose what fits with me. Selling is very personal. One of the best ways I know to get a man to take mental ownership. And he'll own it mentally or he'll never pay you for it financially. If he doesn't own it mentally, he'll never pay you for it financially. One question. Tell you a little story. It happened to me right here in Denver, Colorado at O'Meara Ford Center, right up here on 104th North Glen. December the 19th, 1979. I was the third man to take a turn on the deal. And usually that's a good time to get a turn. You're third. I go in, get the salesman. I said, let's qualify it just a minute. I said, do you have the buyer and the decision maker over there? Would you agree sometimes you can have the buyer and not have the decision maker? Also, can you have the decision maker and not have the buyer? He said, yep, the man and his wife sitting over at the desk. Has he driven the car? He said twice. Very professional organization. He had driven the car twice. The man and his wife was both sitting there. I said, will he own the car now? He said, he just wants to think about it. You ever had one like that? Well, let us just think about it. Let us go home and study over it. Let us go home and look at our financial accounts, you know, and, or how about this one? Let us go home and pray over it. Now, please, don't misunderstand me. I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm fixing to say. Don't make light of any man's belief in his religion. I have seen people very serious about that. I had one just recently in Cleveland, Tennessee. As I said, I just left there. And the guy said to me, he said, well, Jack, let us go home and pray over this, and we'll get back with you tomorrow. And I said, well, I think that's fine, sir, and I think you should. It's obvious to me you're a Christian. Is that right? He said, well, yes, we are. And we normally pray about things because we feel that the Lord leads us. I said, the Lord leads you? He said, yes. I said, do you think he led you here by mistake? A little heavy there. Be careful with that one. Bolt of lightning could extract you from the face of the earth. Beware. Beware. But this particular story, I walked over and I sat down. I went in and got the pleasantries out of the way. I said, nice looking shirt, good looking pair of shoes, good looking dog. He had an old dog laying there tied with a string to the desk. I talked about his dog for a few minutes. Then I said to him, I said, Walter, I said, where will you take your first trip in your new Ford? Where will you take your first trip in your new Ford? And what that old man said to me, I'll never forget. He leaned back in his chair and he said, well, I tell you, Jack, me and my wife probably go to Los Angeles for Christmas to see my daughter. He said, the way we go to Los Angeles, we go down to Colorado Springs, then we go over to Provo, Utah, go through the mountains there and go back to Provo, and then we go south to St. George. He said, then out of St. George, we go down to Las Vegas. He's from Las Vegas, we go down to Flagstaff, and then we go from Flagstaff over to Bakersville. From Bakersville, that old man sit there in that chair and drove me all the way from Denver, Colorado to L.A. He didn't miss a turn. I had to stop and take a leak on the way out there. He didn't miss a turn. He even told me what exit he'd get off of at California. He said, you get off that exit there on the freeway, and he said, you go down about 2 blocks, you see this large apartment building? He said, that's where my daughter lives. I said, well, did you want this in your daughter's name or your name? He said, oh, no, hell, put it in mine. What did he just do? Where was he at when he was telling me how he would drive to California? Hell, I had to weave through the mountains a couple times, you know, as he going. He didn't miss a road. Now, I'm trying to dramatize something. If you don't believe it, it won't work. Try it sometime. Mr. Prospect, where will you take your first trip in your new car? You want to tell me what most people do with a new car when they buy one? They're going to show it off. Most guys take it over and show it to the mother-in-law. They want to gouge them first, you know. Just a little question there. Where will you take your first trip? Not where would you. Where will you take your first trip? Number 2 question. And you can use all of them or you don't have to use any. Number 2 question. Working at a Cadillac store one afternoon. And the manager told me, I said, Jack, I want you to take all the blowouts. Don't take it up. Don't get the other guy's money. But if they can't close them, you see them walking, how about taking a turn? I said, fine, I'll do that. And I'm standing on the showroom floor, and here's a guy fixing to walk out of this Cadillac store, and he had 1 foot outside the door. And this salesman says to me, Jack, you want to talk to this guy? That's a good place to get a turn. He's got 1 foot out the door, and he wants to know, do I want to talk with him? So quick, I had to come back. I just said to him, I said, sir, will that Cadillac fit in your garage? Do what? I said, will that Cadillac fit in your garage? Will it fit in my garage? Well, hell, it's smaller than the one I'm trading in. That's why I just wondered, do you back in your garage or do you pull in forward? Do a what, boy? I said, do you back in your garage or do you pull in forward? Do I back in my garage? How long you been selling cars, fella? I said, a few days. He started back in. I said, if I could take just a minute. He walked back in the door. I said, good, come on, have a seat with me. I said, I was just asking, you know, make sure the car fit in your garage. He said, oh, hell yeah, it fit in my garage. He said, but you asked me, did I back in my garage? He said, why in the hell would you ask me something like that? I said, well, you know, some people do. He said, oh, hell no, I don't. I just drive right in. Where did he put the car? Where did he go mentally? So help me, if I'm lying, I'm dying, closed him. Where did he go with that car mentally? Put it right in that garage. Now, don't use any of it. If you don't need it, don't use it. You ever seen a salesman talk himself right in a deal? Talk himself right back out? When does a prospect buy a car? When he signs a contract? When he pays you for it? When he takes delivery?